My people, by now, you've probably seen the video. Ciara in tears, standing in Cotonou, Benin, receiving her citizenship papers. She walked the slave route. She stood before the door of no return. And in that moment, the world said, wow, what a powerful homecoming. But here's the part you didn't hear. This moment wasn't just made possible by a famous name or a viral photo op. It was the result of a fight led by Afro-descendants from the Caribbean who refused to be treated like tourists in the land of their ancestors, who pushed Benin to open its arms, not just symbolically, no, but legally, who said, we don't want your souvenirs, we want citizenship. And guess what? They won. In 2024, Benin passed a law granting citizenship to descendants of enslaved Africans, not because it was convenient, but because the people demanded it. And now in 2025, Ciara becomes the first celebrity to walk through the door that Caribbean descendants pried open. Today we're breaking down, what does this moment really mean for Benin, for Africa, and for the diaspora? And after years of symbolic gestures from African nations, can Benin finally turn this into something deeper than a photo op, into a model for real belonging, real return, and real impact? We're going to break it down, but first, thank you to all of our new subscribers and members. And if you haven't joined us yet, what are you waiting for? Please hit subscribe and tap the alert so you never miss a new release from us. Now, before we dive into today's discussion, I just have to say that I've missed you all so much this past week. I was away on a short but incredibly productive trip to Ghana, bringing you some exclusive interviews that tie directly into the conversations that we've been having here on The Breakdown. It's always hard for me when I travel because I don't get to sit down and shoot every day, but trust me, these conversations are worth it. In Ghana, I had the privilege of sitting down with some of the brightest minds and leaders shaping Africa's future. I had the pleasure of speaking with Honorable Alain Tremateng, one of the key architects of the African Continental Free Trade Area, about where things stand today and why 8 years after its signing, Africa's grand trade deal is still facing roadblocks. Oh, it was a good one. And I also had a chance to sit down with Dr. Sangudele, the Harvard scholar and investor disrupting Africa's healthcare sector in ways that could change millions of lives. And I also had a rare, wide-ranging conversation with Honorable Samia Nkrumah, daughter of the legendary Kwame Nkrumah, about her father's legacy and what Africa truly lost when he was removed from power. I also spent time with local entrepreneurs, university students, and everyday Ghanaians, the very people shaping the next chapter of Africa's story. I cannot wait to share these special features with you. In the meantime, follow me on socials at Sandra Babu-Boateng for a sneak peek at what's coming your way. All right, now, let's get into it.
I could not leave this special moment without saying a couple of words. I truly feel so thankful, and my heart is full of so much gratitude during this special moment, beyond what words could say. But I just want to say thank you so much for this special honor. I'm going to hold this very close to my heart. I cannot wait to go home and show my family this beautiful certificate. I feel incredibly proud to be here with you all. I feel incredibly proud to also be a part of the importance of this moment and what it means. The significance of this moment is so special, so powerful, and I feel inspired. Merci beaucoup, Your Excellence.
Merci, c'est un plaisir.
Oh.
Et merci infiniment.
Thank you so much. So sweet, I'm so proud.
Merci.
So you've probably seen the videos and images from the ceremony all over your feed, right? It's been trending. Ciara, tears in her eyes, holding her Beninese citizenship certificate in Cotonou. This wasn't just a moment of celebrity. It was a statement, a historic affirmation of belonging. On July 26, the Grammy-winning star was officially granted Beninese citizenship under the country's new law for descendants of enslaved Africans. Justice Minister Yvonne Deschenu called it an act of justice, but also one of belonging and hope. He said Benin is not only legally recognizing these children of Africa, but is also healing a historical wound. And that's not all. Ciara then walked the slave route in Ouida and stood at the door of no return, a deeply emotional pilgrimage. This wasn't just about symbolism. It was about reclaiming what was staking. And at that moment, the world paused to listen. But as powerful as it looked on camera, the truth is, this moment didn't just appear out of nowhere. And it did not start with Ciara. It's rooted in decades of struggle, faith, and grassroots movement.
Delegations from Nigeria, Ghana, Togo, and the Antilles arrived to pay their final respects to Mère Ja, an ecological activist born in the Caribbean island of Guadeloupe, who later became Beninese. For years, she fought tirelessly for the rights of Afro-descendants to be granted citizenship in Benin.
It's a 27-year struggle that is about to come to an end, even though Mère Ja will not see it.
The return campaigner passed away just 10 days before Cotonou announced plans to officially recognize Afro-descendants as Africans. Her husband and fellow activist, Père Ja, says such institutional acceptance would be hugely significant to the African diaspora.
Today, it's truly our nationality that confirms we're returning as African.
Long before the cameras, the press, and the passport ceremony, there was a woman named Mère Ja, an ecological and Pan-African activist from Guadeloupe in the Caribbean. Her story is one of faith, fire, and homecoming. It all began in 1997 when the Ja family, Mère Ja, her husband, and their children left Guadeloupe and returned to the ancestral land in Benin, guided by a prophecy rooted in the Rastafari movement. According to Rastafari teachers, the descendants of those who were stolen from Africa during the transatlantic slave trade would one day return. No, not as captives, but as liberated heirs. And that's exactly what the Jaws did. But they didn't just return quietly. Mère Ja turned her life into a mission. She fought tirelessly for years for the government of Benin to recognize the rights of Afro-descendants and to grant them citizenship. Not just a welcome mat, not a symbolic visit, but real, legal belonging. And while she was fighting policy, she was also building power on the ground. She and her husband founded Ecologia, a grassroots school rooted in agriculture, ecology, and Pan-African history. They created Savast, a 4-hectare agroecological center in the Pahu forest near Ouida, where children learn to grow food, preserve the environment, and understand their heritage. She opened an orphanage. She built a community development center. She planted seeds, literally and figuratively, for a new future. And even when a devastating fire hit Ecologia in 2019, the community rallied. The school was rebuilt through shared solidarity. All of this long before the law ever existed, before Ciara stepped foot on the red earth of Benin, before the headlines. So you see, when the government of Benin passed the law in 2024 offering the citizenship to descendants of enslaved Africans, it wasn't just a political gesture. It was the result of decades of grassroots pressure, of spiritual conviction, and of people like Mère Ja, who said, we don't just want to visit, we want to belong. So yes, Ciara may be the first celebrity to benefit from this law, but let us never forget, she is walking through a door that Caribbean freedom fighters like Mère Ja built with their bare hands. So how did Ciara, an African-American celebrity, end up with Beninese citizenship? Well, it was the result of the new law, a bold and overdue move by the Beninese government to right a historical wrong. In September 2024, Benin passed legislation that officially grants citizenship to descendants of enslaved Africans, especially those whose ancestors were trafficked through the region once known as the Bight of Benin, one of the most brutal departure points during the transatlantic slave trade. But here's what makes this different. This isn't a symbolic gesture, no. It's a legal framework. There's a clear process, and anyone who meets the criteria can apply. The eligibility rules are simple but powerful. You must be at least 18 years old, you must not already hold citizenship from another African country, and you must prove your ancestral connection either through DNA testing, oral family history, or archival documentation. Benin also launched a digital platform called My Afro Origins, which helps applicants trace their lineage and submit their documents. It's designed to make this return not just possible, but structured, something you can actually follow through. Now, this is important because for decades, Africa has welcomed Afro descendants in spirit, right? But rarely in law. There have been cultural tours, spiritual pilgrimages, even dual citizenship proposals in places like Ghana and Sierra Leone. But most of those have been symbolic, discretionary, or limited to one-time ceremonies. Benin is trying to do something different here. They're saying, you don't have to be born here to belong here. If your ancestors were taken from this soil, you have the right to return, not just as a visitor, but as a citizen. This is the blueprint many in the diaspora have been waiting for. Because let's be real, belonging needs paperwork. Belonging needs passports. And for Black people whose identities were stolen, scattered, and severed by slavery, this is a powerful act of restoration. Now, let's be clear, right? Benin is not the first African country to grant citizenship to descendants of enslaved people. Ghana welcomed the diaspora during its year of return in 2019, and Sierra Leone has granted passports to African Americans and Caribbeans who could trace their roots through DNA. And several other countries have talked about reconciliation, return, and repair. So what makes Benin's move different is this. Benin wasn't just a victim of the slave trade. It was one of its most active players, its key engines. From the 1600s to the 1800s, the kingdom of Dahomey, what we now call Benin, was a dominant force on the slave coast. European ships would dock along the shores, and Dahomean kings would sell captured Africans, often prisoners of war or kidnapped villagers, in exchange for weapons, textiles, and liquor. This wasn't passive. It was systemic. An estimated 1.5 to 2 million enslaved people were shipped out of the Bight of Benin. Ouidah, the town where Ciara walked the slave route, well, that was one of the busiest slave ports on the entire continent. And let's be honest, this is a painful truth to sit with. Because we're not just talking about foreign invaders, we're talking about African complicity. We're talking about kingdoms who sold their own people. In a continent that for generations couldn't bring itself to say, we played a part. But Benin did something different. In 1999, then President Mathieu Kérékou issued a public apology, not just to the African diaspora, but to history itself. He acknowledged Benin's role in the slave trade. He asked for forgiveness, and in doing so, he opened the door to a long overdue conversation. That apology wasn't the end. It was the beginning. And now, 25 years later, Benin is going further, offering citizenship to the descendants of those it once sold. Not just words, but restoration. Not just sorrow, but real structure. That apology was symbolic, but this law is substantive. It's a recognition that history is not just something we remember, right? But that it is something we must repair. By offering citizenship to the descendants of those once sold through its ports, Benin is saying we can't undo the past, but we can build a different kind of future. And what this law really gives us is a challenge, right? Will the diaspora answer the call? Will other African nations rise to meet this moment? And more importantly, can we build a two-way bridge where Afro-descendants don't just come back to find their roots, but to rebuild, to invest, to belong, and to shape the Africa of tomorrow? Well, let's talk about it. What can Benin do to make this real? What does it take to turn return into rebuilding? Here are a few concrete things Benin should consider doing. Number one, create a diaspora resettlement and investment program to offer resources, real support, and assistance to Afro-descendants who want to relocate. We should make it easy and attractive to stay and build, not just to visit your homeland. Number two, establish a Pan-African innovation and heritage hub that serves as the gateway for diaspora African collaboration. Think creatives, educators, and entrepreneurs from the diaspora working alongside locals. A program where joint ventures in agriculture, clean energy, media, and even education are incubated. Number three, guarantee civil rights for new citizens. And this is important. Citizenship should come with power, not just paper. So Benin should guarantee full civil rights for new diaspora citizens, including voting in local elections, access to public services, and legal protections under the Constitution, because you can't claim belonging without agency, right? And number four, institutionalize a National Day of Return. Very much like Ghana's Year of Return, Benin could anchor its citizenship law in annual observance, a Return and Rebuild Day, with cultural festivals, investment forums, reconciliation rituals, and policy roundtables with African and diaspora leaders. This would create visibility, structure, and momentum for the initiative. Because here's the truth. The diaspora doesn't just want to come home. They want to contribute, but that requires vision, infrastructure, and partnership. So where do we go from here, my people? If you're in the diaspora, start learning about the My Afro Origins platform. Explore your roots. Don't just repost the viral clip of Ciara, but ask yourself where you fit into this story. And if you're on the continent, push your leaders to follow Benin's lead and go even further. Symbolism is easy. Systems are hard. But systems are what change lives. Yes. And if you're a policymaker in Benin, know this. You're sitting on a historic opportunity, and you can turn this nation into a blueprint for African reconnection, reinvestment, and rebirth. But only if you make it real. So, my people, now I turn it over to you. What do you think? Is this the kind of return we've been waiting for? Or are we still stuck in the cycle of photo ops without follow through? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's talk about it. Which of these ideas should Benin take on first? Would you move to Africa if there was real infrastructure to support you? And if you've already made the move, let us know what's your experience been like. Let's have a real conversation. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. That's it for today's show. I'm Sandra Babu-Boateng. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, take care. Hey you! Thanks so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and join the family. Also, visit face2faceafrica.com for your daily news and updates on what's going on within the global Black community so you can stay informed.